the 31st of October 2024, the University of Cape Town hosted a research project output event in collaboration with Professor Jane Duncan from the University of Glasgow. The project, Watching the Watchers, Strengthening Public Oversight of Intelligence-Driven Surveillance, formed part of the BA Global Professorship that Prof. Duncan was awarded. This 4-year research project explores how public oversight can limit the abuse of digital surveillance powers by intelligence agencies in Southern Africa. The study looks at 8 countries: Angola, Botswana, the DRC, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, uncovering a mix of success, failure, and fragile victories.
Our research project focuses on moments in 8 Southern African countries when surveillance abuses have come into the public domain, and the public, in the form of civil society organizations or popular mass movements or journalists, have exposed these abuses, taken on the intelligence agencies and attempted to call them to account for these abuses. That we could consider to be public oversight. And those incidents of intelligence accountability, the practice of intelligence accountability from the bottom up, if you like, have had mixed outcomes in the countries that we are examining. Some have succeeded and they've had lasting impacts on how intelligence is practiced. And we can point to South Africa and Botswana as examples where legislation was changed through the intervention of investigative journalists and civil society. South Africa's main surveillance law, RICA, was struck down as being unconstitutional on 5 counts because an investigative journalism outfit whose managing editor, Sam Sol, was put under surveillance, said no and stood up and challenged the authorities, and then took a case to the High Court and eventually the Constitutional Court and won their case.
Angola's 15+2 case showed how international outrage can force state action, even in unstable regimes.
This is a work which focuses on an example of a successful public oversight in an anocratic political context of Angola. Why I call Angola an anocratic system? Because yes, some tenets of democracy and some aspects of democracy, of dictatorship. And there is an inherent instability. Freedom of expression is also allowed by the Constitution, and most of times people can speak what is in their minds, but sometimes when they speak, they go to jail. We never know for sure when we go to jail or we can speak freely. So, regarding the case, on the afternoon of June 20, 2015, 13 human rights defenders and activists were arrested at gunpoint by the Angolan police while participating in a conference session on the ideological philosophy of peaceful revolution in Luanda. The Criminal Investigation Service of the Minister of Interior published a press release on the day of the arrest and announcing that various steps were taken that culminated in the arrest in flagrante delito of 13 national citizens who were preparing to carry out aim of altering the public's order and security. During the operation, a series of pieces of evidence were seized. However, those arrests proceed without any arrest warrant, information about the reasons for their arrest, or the possibility of contacting a lawyer or family. The case was a defeat to the Angolan governments, leading to the retreat and ultimately to an amnesty law. most probably was a main reason for the change did not apply to re-election in 2017. He retreated from the president in 2017 after this fiasco. There was some reasons for this fiasco. The first one was the widespread coverage, media coverage of Wati Beirão 36-day hunger strike. Probably because he was Portuguese Angolan and the son of one of the symbols of the Sancho regime. The father of Wati Beirão was the general director of José Eduardo Santos Foundation. Wati Beirão receives widespread interest from the Portuguese press. And from there, the interest spread out of the world. Apparently, the Portuguese media projected Wati Beirão and his hunger strike. He confessed afterwards that he was completely astonished by the almost what he called pornographic laugh that this thing, the hunger strike, look all over the world. It reached the United Nations, Department of State of the Obama government, and so on. So the adverse publicity from the Portuguese press was one of the reasons for the Angolan government to take the case serious. A second axis was the use of social media, mostly new portals and Facebook posts. The Angolan government was used, as mentioned, to control the media with the direct or indirect ownership of television and radio. Any dissent ended generally with $1 million purchases of the media in question. Now, social media exists and the government was not prepared to contradict the social media. Finally, there was international pressure. The US State Department, United Nations, American Bar Association, even an attorney from the Portuguese Public Prosecutor's Office and a member of the National Board of the Prosecutors Union of Portugal wrote a column in a Portuguese newspaper against the case. So we have here a moment of singularity with a set of circumstances almost unrepeatable, or at least not predictable, happen.
Mauritius stood out for a broad-based, successful campaign against biometric ID cards, driven by privacy concerns and strong civic culture. Unlike many states, Mauritius became a rare example of effective public oversight.
So this statement is based on the assumption that when a country has got strong institutions, public oversight becomes maybe easier, but Zimbabwe shows us probably the opposite. I think Tabani would. I think what has made Zimbabwean civic society very strong and is because of the weak institutions that are in that country. Therefore, the public comes up and institute public oversight in the absence of strong institutional oversight mechanism. So I think it's a very interesting kind of statement, and we'll see what comes out from the other countries. But I think also another important one was strategic litigation. So it wasn't just protest, public awareness, research, and also, but there was also challenges, legal challenges that were done, against the smart ID card. So analyzing the factors that led to successful mobilization is essential, I think, to understand whether the success stemmed from unique circumstances, as I said before, specific to that historical period, or it was influenced by inherent characteristic of Mauritian society. So I argue that in the paper that the successful mobilization is likely attributed to a combination of specific historical circumstances plus also deeper societal factors that are embedded in Mauritian society. Then, so Mauritius, I think, demonstrates the significance of media, civil society and citizens as crucial components of the oversight system. The prospects, however, for public oversight in the country going forward are uncertain due to what scholars have pointed out, that there is a democratic backsliding in the country, caused by several, I think the economy, but also issues around corruption, and also the political system is becoming increasingly leader-centric as it continues to be dominated by a few families, and power and decisions are concentrated, in these power blocks.
In Namibia, indiscriminate mass surveillance has been a grave concern for its population. This case study argues that public oversight, exercised in concert with judicial and media institutions, can result in successful oversight of intelligence-driven surveillance that strikes at the heart of the culture of secrecy.
What we're looking at is the oversight mechanisms, or the nature of oversight, both formal and informal oversight over the operational and surveillance activities of the Namibian Central Intelligence Service, and trying to identify, whether these oversight mechanisms are actually effective. And in the Namibian case, this is what we're ultimately demonstrating. These mechanisms, the formal mechanisms, are deficient. They're weak. They do not actually play any meaningful oversight role, especially the parliamentary committee that should really be providing the public interest oversight, and in fact is failing to do so. And then also, on the other hand, to show that it's the informal oversight, the civil society, the media, that have been more effective at raising concerns, raising questions around the governance challenges that have surfaced in public over the years around the conduct.
Namibia is a constitutional democracy, largely, and accomplished one in that regard. But what it means is it operates within the limits of its own constitution, which means if you want to analyze it from the perspective of how the country defines itself democratically, we may not see the weaknesses of its own democracy, which is why we take the radical democratic approach outlined by Chantal Mouffe, and also Gramsci's approach, which is to see power as an element of competition, or society as organized around competition between different interests. So a radical approach to democracy then requires us to assess the organization of society in terms of how different perspectives are accommodated without escalating things to the level of violence. And to appreciate that, I think our approach is to say, if oversight on intelligence systems is a reflection of the kind of society that we are talking about, then the very discussion about whether or not there is oversight and the kind of oversight that is there is the substance of democracy. That's what democracy is all about. And difference is about how oversight should be organized, again, at the substance of a democracy. And there is no permanent position about how oversight should be organized, because democracy is always a continuous, it's always in a continuous process of contestation, revision, modification, and adjustment to the way society is also adjusting, especially given the transformations in technology and emerging social justice issues and so on and so on.
In Mozambique and Zimbabwe, colonial-era surveillance practices persist, reinforced by weak democratic traditions and centralized intelligence.
Towards the end of the Mugabe regime, the security services were very much divided. The Central Intelligence Agency was led by General Hepson Ibonyongwe, and it was said to be part of the Mugabe system. And the military belonged to the current president and the vice president. So this dichotomization of security services was very clear. But it also has consequences. One of the consequences is, remember I had said there was a National Security Council. There is a National Security. So if they are operating like they belong to two different countries, it means intelligence gathering itself is compromised. And there is no room for effective intelligence gathering. Basically, everything becomes very political. This is one interesting case about Zimbabwe. Those who thrive on this kind of factionalized intelligence are scared of their very own instrument. They know they created a Frankenstein that can come and hound them as well. So if we are to understand what is happening in Zimbabwe in terms of intelligence gathering, you are not only supposed to understand it as a partisan and political, but also as a part of a growing culture of factionalism in the ruling party. So there is a relationship there. And right now, if you have been following news in Zimbabwe, there is now a serious tussle for power between the president and the vice president. And it's always going to worsen these kind of practices. Then there is also one thing also about ZANU-PF. When it is faced by an external opponent, they actually can form a very formidable unity in order to fight an external opponent. This is also another development. External opposition has been a driver to ZANU-PF, to intelligence politicization. So you will see the rise of the opposition, the MDC, Movement for Democratic Change, in around 1999. So it actually heightened intelligence, partisan intelligence. And there are credible reports that the CIO was actually involved in the abduction and the murder and the torture of opposition officials. So the outcomes of intelligence gathering in Zimbabwe are they are illegal and they are partisan at the same time.
Unlike in the case of Mauritius, Mozambique's intelligence services have operated in the shadows, without meaningful oversight from parliament, the judiciary, civil society, or the media. In a political landscape dominated by an authoritarian regime, power is centralized in the hands of the head of state, who wields intelligence as a tool of control. Our investigation sheds light on the systemic weaknesses in oversight mechanisms and explores how true accountability is essential to ensuring legitimacy, especially within a democratic context.
After the first democratic constitution, and also this was because of the peace agreement, the intelligence, it was influenced by the authoritarian culture. Even the regulation themselves, they remained with some part where it was given those power to surveil, and also without clear supervision and accountability mechanism. So we have a lot of discussion in the paper where we show how those provisions are weak and how then are giving power to the intelligence to surveil without supervision. So in terms of our three main arguments on those three entities of external surveillance, we pointed out the powers, the full powers of the president, which at the same time is nominating the Chief Justice, and also is nominating the General Prosecutor, and also is controlling the Parliament from Frelimu's branch, which has the majority in the Parliament. Even the Constitution gives what they call the Council of the State. This body doesn't have any provision, clear provision, to supervise the intelligence. So the intelligence in terms of our legal framework from the Constitution and the law which found it put it in the direct dependence on the head of state. So it's like it responds directly to the head of state and not responding to the Parliament in terms of the accountability. The civic space is limited, and this proves how the SIM card regulation was introduced to combat and restrict the freedoms. So there's a lot of argument which we bring to show the limitation of civic space, the weakness of media, and also of the NGOs. And also the other thing is that according to the data we collected, we saw that the NGO and media, they are trying to do something on our oversight when we talk about other thematic areas such as corruption, things. But this issue of intelligence, security is something which needs some time, specific skill to be understood. And they are not tackling this, so they didn't put it in their agenda of oversighting the government as a watchdog. So that's why we say that these three levels of argument, they had impact on the failure of the civic movement to protest or to advocate against this diploma which introduced the SIM card. So this failure in 2010 make the authoritarianism win, because what they did is to implement this diploma, and they reinforced it this year in the beginning, and no one said nothing. So what we have today is that we have a biometric SIM card registration, which include now, if the law passed, or it passed, it's starting to be implemented. You will not only register your biometric data, they are requiring you to register all device you buy. Like, if you change the device you registered, your biometric data, and buying a new one, you need to go to update it. Because if you don't do that, you will be sued by the law.
The DRC showed both the potential and limits of public pressure, especially when foreign media got involved. This case study seeks to answer two questions. What are the explanatory factors for the low interest of Congolese civil society in the issue of surveillance? And how could civil society actions limit the abuses of surveillance?
In DRC, civil society organizations face restriction on online civic space by government authority. These restrictions are based on digital network security and claim to digital sovereignty. The DRC government wished to exercise control over digital activity. In the National Digital Plan, the president of the DRC expressed its desire to consolidate digital sovereignty. Secondly, there is no place in the civil society organization chart for public monitoring of electronic surveillance. There are no component or thematic group interested in this issue. This lack of interest is partly due to the absence of players in this field. However, public control of electronic surveillance is included in the activity, can be included in the activities of two thematic groups like democracy and human rights. Electronic surveillance sometimes involves restriction on civic and democratic space. It also leads to the manipulation of personal data, which constitutes a violation of privacy. As such, civil society organizations should deal with it within existing thematic group without having to create a new structure. Faced with this situation and with the advent of decentralization, Congolese legislators are trying to put civil society back at the heart of security issue and electronic surveillance.
The DRC case study it shows movements that spoke back to authorities when they felt like intelligence data had become excessively collected. So the state was overstepping its mandate in terms of intelligence gathering. So you will see that it mobilized the Roman Catholic Church. It also mobilized quite a number of other myriad players within society who were able to form a coalition to oppose specific aspects of intelligence gathering. And in one case, as has been presented, they were successful to stop the state. But on the other hand, civil society were not able to mobilize the same awareness toward and channel it towards a specific goal in order to stop the state from overreach. We are trying here to map and explore the extent to which citizens can be involved in the oversight of intelligence agencies. The idea being that intelligence agencies cannot be left on their own. There should be some kind of oversight on them, especially one that is driven by the citizens in order to fence off specific rights from encroachment by these agencies. And one lesson that I have learned is that it is very difficult for us to have a one-size-fits-all approach to civilian oversight of intelligence agencies. The reasons being that, one, the political contexts are different, and two, the degree of citizen awareness around intelligence agencies are also different in different countries. So these, I think, are so far the take-home lessons I have learned from the project.
The state of Botswana is one of those where the traditional oversight mechanisms have proven to be inadequate and/or ineffective. The oversight deficit in the intelligence sector challenges us to explore other complementary mechanisms. This case study explores the potential and use of popular agency on the intelligence sector in Botswana.
We look at the issue of accountability. What are the mechanisms that are presently in place to promote the accountability of the security sector and the performance of its mandate? And in this study, I hope I'm not moving ahead, we do make the finding that there is an oversight deficit. What do I mean by that? That the traditional mechanisms that are used to ensure that the intelligence sector is accountable are really not effective. And I'm talking about executive control, legislative control, and judicial control. And the thesis that the paper is positing is to complement these traditional methods of oversight with popular agency. Popular agency, the role that non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations and the media can actually play, both in terms of playing a watchdog role on the security sector, and also the extent to which they can influence policies that relate to the operation of the sector. With the exception of South Africa and Mauritius, when it comes to issues of accountability in these other states, including Namibia, you find that there is a lot of politicization and personalization of the use of the security sector, particularly by the incumbent government or the sitting president. And that's really worrisome, because when the security or issues of security are now viewed as only benefiting the sitting president, and that's actually a fatal breeding place for their abuse. But when I actually look at the countries that I've just made reference to, you'll notice that these are more or less like one-party dominant countries. Some, well, their democratic credentials are questionable. But I think what I learned looking at the Mauritius example, because it appears that the government is really responsive to people's views. And when you look at the Mauritian political landscape, it is actually quite competitive.
The research shows that public oversight works best when there is local capacity, political openness, and real social pressure, but lasting reform remains a challenge across the region.